Welcome to Anime What If Saga, the ultimate channel where hidden stories and untold legends from your favorite anime come alive. In this series, we dive deep into the extraordinary tale of Sung Il-Hwan, the unsung hero of solo leveling. From his humble beginnings as a determined hunter, through epic battles marked by elemental mastery, to the profound sacrifices he made for family and humanity, we explore every shadowed corner of his journey. Join us as we bring this cinematic, richly detailed saga to life, capturing the heart, the struggle, and the legacy of a man who became a symbol of hope amid darkness. Subscribe now and step into the world where every shadow hides a story waiting to be told. In the modest town where the sprawling metropolis of Seoul would one day rise, the streets carried the quiet echoes of a world rebuilding itself. Here, Sung Il-Hwan's story began, rooted deeply in simplicity and hard-earned dreams. The small, humble home he was born into bore the scars of a past marred by conflict and struggle, yet within its walls blossomed the fragile roots of hope and resilience. Il-Hwan's childhood was a tapestry woven with lessons of discipline and sacrifice. His father, a man defined by stoic resolve and a heart tempered by hardship, instilled lifelong values of honor and duty. Even as a boy, Il-Hwan felt the weight of responsibility pressing upon his slender frame, not just toward himself but toward those he loved most profoundly. Life was seldom easy. Days were filled with laborious chores alongside schoolwork, each moment sculpting the contours of a character destined for extraordinary burden. Still, beneath the trials lay a family bound by mutual care, a mother whose gentle warmth offered solace from the world's harshness, and siblings who shared laughter amidst adversity. Faint whispers of the rising danger beyond the city's borders began to disrupt the fragile peace. Tales of mysterious portals, dungeons bursting forth into reality, kindled both fear and fascination. It was this dawning nightmare that set Il-Hwan on a path unlike any before, awakening a determination to shield his family and community from encroaching darkness. His early training was relentless. He lifted weights heavier than himself, practiced martial movements with unwavering focus, and readied his body and mind for threats most would never imagine. Though not the strongest by nature, his iron will and steely perseverance compensated for any lack. Yet, amid the rigor, Il-Hwan was a father-to-be, nurturing dreams for his son, with hopes that Jinwoo would live a life defined not by danger but by happiness. His relationship with his wife was the calm center in a world tipping ever closer to chaos, promises of protection exchanged in quiet moments before the storms of responsibility called him away. Every sacrifice, every trial, every battle faced was underscored by a profound love, a fierce commitment to the future he struggled to build for his family and fellow hunters alike. This chapter barely scratches the surface of Il-Hwan's layered origins, setting a rich, cinematic foundation for the saga of a man whose courage would ripple across generations. As the seasons shifted, so too did the challenges defining Sung Il-Hwan's path. The boy who once learned perseverance in a modest household was evolving, his spirit tempered by the quiet struggles of growing responsibility and the dawning realization of the world's ruthless nature. Il-Hwan's teenage years were shaped by the burgeoning threat of dungeons, mysterious and perilous rifts cutting through the fabric of reality. These doors to another world promised power, danger, and the unknown. For Il-Hwan, they were a call to action, an avenue to protect the people he loved, but also a crucible to test his limits. Immersed in grueling physical training and intense study, Il-Hwan honed skills in combat, strategy, and elemental control, the foundations of his emerging powers. His teachers were harsh, pushing his endurance to the brink, demanding not just strength but unwavering focus and discipline. Yet amid this ferocity, moments of doubt flickered in his heart. Was the path of a hunter the destiny he wished for himself or the burden he must bear for his family's survival? In the rare stolen hours, he sought solace in his family's warmth. His mother's songs and his younger siblings' laughter grounded him, reminding him of all worth fighting for. The presence of his wife, and the promise of his unborn child, anchored his resolve. Il-Hwan's relationship with his father was complex, rooted in respect but tinged with unspoken tension. The elder man understood the dangers that lay ahead and the sacrifices required, often expressing his love through guarded wisdom rather than overt warmth. Determined to rise above the shadows looming over his world, Il-Hwan embarked on his first forays into dungeon raids. The experiences were brutal, a baptism by fire filled with fear, pain, and fleeting triumphs. He learned to command elemental forces, earth and flame intertwining with his will, shaping them into devastating weapons. Each victory cemented his growing reputation as a formidable hunter. But with power came enemies, ferocious beasts, rival hunters, and dark conspiracies festering in the Hunter Association's corridors. Il-Hwan navigated these threats with precision and courage. This period sowed foundational scars and strengths, physical, emotional, and spiritual, that would define his legacy. His sacrifices grew grander, his motivations clearer, and his resolve fierce. The day Sung Il-Hwan crossed the threshold into the world of hunters was both an end and a beginning, a rite of passage that would shape him and those who depended on him. The familiar streets of his youth, touched by laughter and lingering warmth, faded as the harsh realities of his new life took hold. Training intensified beyond anything he had imagined. The Hunter Academy was a crucible where only the strongest endured, where discipline and grit were as vital as raw power. Il-Hwan's physique was tested daily, his mind sharpened through strategy, survival, and the study of monstrous creatures that lurked beyond known realms. He grappled with the agonizing balance between hope and fear. Every lesson learned in sparring, every strategic flaw exposed in mock battles forged a sculptor's hand over a rough stone. Despite relentless challenges, Il-Hwan's spirit flourished. He discovered latent abilities inherited from a mysterious lineage, an innate affinity for elemental manipulation. Fire danced under his command, earth cracked and responded to his will, marking him as a burgeoning powerhouse among his peers. But it was not merely strength that separated the hunters. It was the willingness to confront death, the resolve to protect beyond oneself. Il-Hwan embodied these ideals, fueled by personal stakes, a family to protect, a son to nurture. Amid rigid schedules and brutal exercises, glimpses of camaraderie and loyalty flourished. Bonds forged in sweat and blood promised allies, and sometimes foes, for the battles ahead. First field missions tested Il-Hwan's fledgling abilities against the unforgiving trials of dungeons. The monstrous inhabitants were merciless, and the corridors winding and treacherous. His elemental prowess unleashed rain fire upon grotesque beasts and manipulated stone walls to shield his team. These early victories and narrow escapes carved reputation and respect. Yet, they also unveiled the darker truths of the hunter world, betrayals, politics, and power struggles layered beneath heroic facades. Il-Hwan learned to navigate these complexities with guarded wisdom. This first part of Chapter 2 immerses the reader in the rigorous transition Sung Il-Hwan endured, physically, mentally, and emotionally, as he stepped fully into the hunter's tumultuous world, laying the groundwork for his later legend. As Sung Il-Hwan's reputation grew, so too did the weight of expectations. Early missions grew more perilous, confronting ever more complex dungeons and increasingly fierce monsters. Each successful raid burned the memory of narrow escapes and fallen comrades into his soul, reshaping him from a hopeful recruit into a seasoned warrior. Within the Hunter Association, whispers about Il-Hwan's prowess circulated with growing frequency. Allies sought his leadership, while rivals eyed him with wary respect and envy. Political currents beneath the surface of hunter camaraderie revealed a web of power plays. Il-Hwan learned to navigate this battlefield as deftly as he handled his elemental magic. His powers matured beyond raw force, mastery over earth and flame grew nuanced. Il-Hwan conjured earthen shields that withstood crushing blows and encased his enemies in blistering infernos. Through relentless training and brutal experience, he refined combinations of elemental fury and tactical precision, turning the wilderness of dungeons into his domain. The demands of duty carved deep fissures in his relationship with his family. His wife bore burdens silently, often facing dangers from which Il-Hwan kept her shielded. His bond with young Jinwoo was a fragile thread strained by absence, danger, and the shadow of legacy. Yet, Il-Hwan cherished these bonds fiercely. Letters exchanged across battlefields were lifelines of hope and grounding. He dreamed of forging a world where his son could be more than a hunter, a man free from the endless cycle of sacrifice. Despite the ever-present dangers, marked by dungeons that twisted violently, and betrayals hidden in hunter politics, Il-Hwan's resolve hardened. Each challenge was a forge shaping his will and dedication. The true transformation of Sung Il-Hwan began on a fateful day deep within the heart of a perilous dungeon. It was a place where darkness seemed to breathe with a life of its own and where every step bore the weight of unseen perils. For Il-Hwan, this was not just another mission, it was the crucible in which his destiny would be forged. During a fierce battle against monstrous denizens, Il-Hwan found himself cornered, the crushing despair threatening to extinguish his will. It was in this moment of vulnerability that an ancient force within him awakened, a latent power awakening from generations past. The air crackled as elemental energies surged, his body a conduit for raw, elemental magic. Flames coiled around his fists while the earth beneath responded to his unspoken command. His attackers staggered, overwhelmed by this sudden eruption of power. This awakening was no accident but a culmination of years of discipline, lineage, and the unyielding resolve to survive and protect. The forces awakened within Il-Hwan granted him heightened strength, agility, and the ability to manipulate earth and flame with devastating precision. Yet, with power came danger. The energy was as wild as it was potent, requiring mastery lest it consume him wholly. Thus began a grueling journey, one of mastering the balance between man and force, wielding it not only for destruction but as a shield for those he vowed to protect. Il-Hwan's awakening also attracted new threats. Darker and more cunning enemies, sensing the rise of such power, emerged with deadly intent. Monarchs, their agents, and rival hunters cast long shadows over his path. Despite formidable enemies, Il-Hwan's resolve only deepened. Training intensified, not just in physical combat but in spiritual control and tactical application of his newfound abilities. Each battle became both a trial and a lesson in wielding the magnificent and dangerous power that now defined him. The battle within the dark labyrinth was more than a test of strength, it became a revelation of destiny. As elemental forces unfurled at Sung Il-Hwan's command, he found himself both awed and challenged by the magnitude of this power. The flames he summoned were not mere fire, they were extensions of raw emotion, rage, hope, and the unrelenting will to survive. The earth itself bent and cracked beneath his will, becoming a shield and weapon intertwined. This awakening was far from instantaneous mastery. Power surged chaotically, threatening to engulf him in its intensity. Il-Hwan endured countless nights wrestling with the volatile energies, seeking harmony between his mortal form and elemental fury. His training evolved into a spiritual journey, learning to listen to the whispers of earth and the dance of fire, responding with calculated precision rather than wrathful outbursts. During this period, his comrades witnessed the transformation with awe and caution. Allies who once doubted his potential now stood inspired by the elemental warrior emerging from their ranks. Yet, old rivalries simmered beneath the surface, other hunters wary or jealous of Il-Hwan's rising star. Il-Hwan's increasing power also drew the gaze of the darker forces lurking in the shadows, monarch minions and corrupted hunters who viewed his rise as a threat to their dominion. Encounters became more brutal, pushing Il-Hwan to refine not only his combat talents but his strategic acumen. He learned to anticipate attacks, exploit weaknesses, and emerge victorious even when outnumbered. Outside the battlefield, Il-Hwan's personal struggles deepened. The tension of his double life, as relentless hunter and devoted father, wove complex emotional webs. His growing power was a source of pride but also fear. The more he embraced this new force, the more distant he sometimes felt from the simple life he once knew, and the son he hoped to protect. Letters home became rare but cherished, each word carrying the weight of unspoken love and hope. Il-Hwan promised himself that this power was a tool, not a curse, to carve a safer world for Jinwoo and the generations to come. The dungeons loomed larger now, no longer mere threats on the horizon but crucibles where Sung Il-Hwan's true mettle was to be tested. These labyrinthine gateways to dark realms, teeming with malevolent creatures and ancient horrors, laid bare the thin line between survival and oblivion. For Il-Hwan, the first major foray into these depths would shape his future, not only as a hunter but as a protector of all he cherished. As the team assembled at the dungeon's formidable entrance, tension pulsed visibly, hunters exchanging terse nods, weapons polished and ready, spells primed and sparking in the air. The air was thick with expectation and the palpable stench of decay emanating from the gaping maw that swallowed the sunlight. Il-Hwan's training and awakening merged seamlessly in the belly of the beast. His elemental powers became both shield and sword as he conjured flames that danced over craggy walls and summoned earthen spikes to spear foes suddenly emerging from shadow. The coordination demanded instinct, toughness, and unerring focus. The monstrous creatures were unlike anything he had faced, a terrifying blend of corrupted flesh, unnatural ferocity, and cunning. Every encounter was a brutal lesson in adaptability and resilience. Ill-prepared hunters fell quickly to monolithic creatures with razor claws or venomous barbs, but Il-Hwan's leadership and raw strength kept their group cohesive in a tide of chaos. One particular battle etched itself permanently into the narrative of Il-Hwan's legacy. In the deepest chamber of the dungeon, a grotesque entity, a malformed colossus dripping with toxic ichor, rose in challenge. The ground quaked under its massive weight, and its roar echoed like thunder. The fight was a symphony of destruction and survival where Il-Hwan's mastery of earth and fire was pushed to its limits. Each strike was deliberate yet fierce, each defense a precarious dance with death. Though the creature's strength was formidable, Il-Hwan's tactical mind and relentless spirit turned the tide, securing a hard-won victory for his team. Victorious yet battered, the hunters emerged from the dungeon scars and stories richer. Il-Hwan's leadership was cemented, his name beginning to spread with the reverent tone given to legends in the making. Back in the sunlight, the world seemed sharper, brighter. But the victories were sobering reminders of the dangers yet to come, the shadows gathering still beyond the horizon. The story of Sung Il-Hwan's first major battles continues with trials that would test not only his elemental powers but his soul and leadership. Following the harrowing dungeon encounter with the Colossus, Il-Hwan's growing command and control over the elemental forces became a beacon for his team. He began orchestrating complex strategies that melded brute strength with calculated finesse, directing infernos to corral enemies while using earthen barriers as bulwarks of defense. The dungeons varied, twisting mazes of darkness where unseen horrors lurked at every turn, ancient crypts harboring curses, and vast underground forests where bizarre predators stalked shadows. Each environment demanded adaptation and grit. Il-Hwan's squad gained recognition for turning back what seemed like certain doom, rallying around his steadfast will. His abilities evolved. He learned to create molten channels that surged forward like dragons of flame, and to cause seismic tremors that shattered monstrous armor and unbalanced foes. Yet with every victory came steep cost. Fellow hunters fell to deadly traps, ambushes, or relentless beasts. Il-Hwan bore the weight of command silently, mourning losses yet pressuring forward. His understanding deepened that leadership was as much about protecting lives as guiding them through inevitable sacrifice. Among the enemies encountered were corrupted hunters, twisted beings fueled by dark forces, former comrades lost to shadows. These encounters became personal battles of redemption and justice, pushing Il-Hwan to challenge limits both physical and moral. Political undercurrents within the Hunter Association complicated matters. Rival guilds questioned his growing influence, and alliances strained under the pressures of power and fear. Il-Hwan navigated these with cautious diplomacy, balancing the battlefield and council chambers alike. In quieter moments, Il-Hwan reflected on the son he hoped to shelter. Letters scribed by candlelight crossed battle lines, carrying dreams of family moments stolen beneath war's shadow. Life as a hunter demanded sacrifices that stretched beyond the battlefield. It seeped into the core of Sung Il-Hwan's existence, shaping every choice, every heartbeat. Beneath the armor of his elemental prowess and the mantle of leadership lay a man tethered by love and an unyielding sense of responsibility to his family. The delicate balance between fatherhood and the relentless demands of being a hunter was a constant trial. Days spent navigating perilous dungeons and nights spent arming strategies were punctuated by the ache of distant memories, soft laughter of a child, the warmth of a wife's embrace, the yearning to be present amid the chaos. Il-Hwan carried the burden silently. His role in the Hunter Association elevated him to a status of reverence and authority, but behind closed doors, he was a man wrestling with fear, the fear that each mission could be his last, the torment of absence from his son Jinwoo's life. Letters were his lifeline, worn parchment filled with promises, hopes, and unspoken regrets. Yet, even the words faltered in conveying the depth of emotion and the weight of the path he had chosen. The strains echoed in Jinwoo's eyes, a reflection of yearning and confusion, bred by the invisible wall that duty erected between father and son. Their moments together became rare sanctuaries amidst storms, the stolen seconds after battles, brief exchanges before dangerous campaigns. Il-Hwan's wife bore the quiet strength of a warrior herself, her support unwavering, her love fierce, and her sacrifices often hidden behind a smile. She understood the dangers that shadowed her husband's life and the peril that loomed over their family's future. These personal struggles did not weaken Il-Hwan. Instead, they steeled his resolve. Every threat faced, every enemy confronted, was to carve out a safer world, a world where Jinwoo could grow without the constant shadow of fear. The Hunter Association's politics, rivalries, and power dynamics further complicated Il-Hwan's life. Factions eyed his rise with envy and caution, and the stakes of leadership escalated beyond the battlefield into corridors of influence and mistrust. Yet, Il-Hwan found solace in a small circle of trusted comrades, friends bound by mutual respect and shared burdens. They confided fears, strategized futures, and reminded one another of their collective mission. The bond between Sung Il-Hwan and his son Sung Jinwoo was one as complex as the world they inhabited, a delicate dance between love, duty, and the inexorable tides of fate. From Jinwoo's earliest days, Il-Hwan nurtured dreams for his son, yearning for a life free from the torment of dungeons and monsters. Yet, emerging threats and unrelenting duties often pulled him away, leaving spaces of absence filled with quiet longing and unspoken promises. Their relationship was marked by moments of warmth and tenderness, where a father's embrace transcended the looming shadows. Il-Hwan sought to impart not only strength but wisdom, the belief that power must be tempered with compassion and that one's true worth is found in protecting others. Yet, the path was not free from tension. The young Jinwoo struggled to understand the magnitude of his father's burdens, the sacrifices demanded by the hunter's life. Feelings of abandonment and the weight of expectations at times created distance between them. Il-Hwan grappled with guilt and hope in equal measure. Every battle was fought not just for survival, but to forge a legacy, a future where Jinwoo could carve his own destiny unhindered by past sacrifices. Silent conversations in the quiet hours became their refuge, glimpses of understanding across years shaped by sacrifice. Il-Hwan's lessons were etched in actions, his protection a shield against a world eager to consume innocence. The city outside felt caught between breaths, its inhabitants oblivious to the growing storm beneath their feet. For Sung Il-Hwan, Every quiet moment marked a brief pause before the next battle, the next clash that threatened to consume his world. The dungeons didn't just increase in number, they grew more sinister, more unpredictable. Entire teams vanished without a trace. Rumors circulated of new enemies far beyond monsters' usual cruelty. Dark forces whispered through cracks in reality, challenging even seasoned hunters. Il-Hwan's elemental mastery became simultaneously his boon and burden. Each battle demanded more finesse. No longer just fire and earth unleashed in brute force, but strategic power tailored to foes evolving faster than any prediction. His leadership transformed. No longer a lone warrior, he was a commander, a beacon guiding fractured teams through chaos. In the heated battles, fiery eruptions painted the cavern walls, earth trembled to his command, and hunters rallied more fiercely. Yet, the cost weighed heavily. Battles took tolls beyond wounds, comrades lost, trust betrayed by those corrupted, and the ever-present fear for the family waiting in the shadows. Il-Hwan's bond with Jinwoo deepened into a quiet promise, that every fight was an effort to build a future free from endless night. Letters were scarce, but each carefully penned word was a lifeline, a tether to hope. Intrigue and danger extended beyond physical realms. Political factions within the Hunter Association eyed Il-Hwan's rising influence with envy and suspicion, complicating alliances needed to fight a war against darkness that transcended mere monsters. His enemies were no longer simply beasts, they were hunters twisted by malice, agents of monarchs lurking in shadows, and factions that saw control as the ultimate prize. Through harrowing choices and relentless determination, Il-Hwan stood unbroken, forge fired by the fires he summoned. The dawn air was heavy with anticipation as Il-Hwan and his squad gathered before the swirling portal, a gateway to a new and more vicious dungeon, recently erupted beneath Seoul's outskirts. The gate shimmered with unnatural light, its edges crackling with unstable energy, murmuring promises of danger and the unknown. Hunters from multiple guilds assembled, their armor glinting and weapons ready, eyes balancing bravado with the sharp awareness that many before had entered and never returned. The alignment of such a force was a testament to the dungeon's threat, a nest of nightmares demanding unprecedented collaboration. Il-Hwan's role was pivotal. His mastery over elemental forces was matchless, and his tactical mind essential in crafting a plan to penetrate the dungeon's shifting corridors, elude lethal traps, and confront the monstrous inhabitants cowering its confines. The team moved as one, moving through shifting shadows and echoing silence. Before them stretched landscapes sculpted by magic, twisting tunnels, collapsing ruins, and enormous cavernous halls where echoes whispered secrets of ancient evil. Il-Hwan conjured molten pillars to carve paths, raising earthen walls to block deadly ambushes. Beasts emerged from every shadow, fanged, clawed, with eyes burning hatred for humanity's intrusion. Each confrontation was a clash of will, power, and survival instinct. A particularly gruesome adversary, a venomous chimeric monstrosity with barbed tails and razor teeth, tested Il-Hwan's limits. The battle raged for hours, flames and earth shaping a brutal ballet where a single misstep meant death. Through deft command and unyielding spirit, Il-Hwan led his comrades to slay the beast, claiming a hard-fought victory. But victory came at a cost. Wounds deep as the scars of battle marked their bodies and souls. The weight of lives lost and the chilling knowledge that darker horrors waited deeper in the dungeon cast shadows heavy upon the team. Exiting the dungeon, Il-Hwan felt an unspoken change, the stakes had escalated. Forces were converging around him and his family, threats bounding ever closer from both familiar and unknown sources. Dawn shivered on the horizon as Sung Il-Hwan paused on the threshold of his apartment, battle gear slung low across weary shoulders. The city beyond was waking, but inside, silence pressed, a reminder of everything the world had taken and everything it threatened still. Il-Hwan's wounds were more than skin deep. Night after night, phantom aches pulsed in old scars, a tapestry woven from 100 battles, each sacrifice etched into flesh and memory. Yet beneath the armor, beneath the exhausted shell, he had become something else. A symbol of silent endurance, the last shield standing for people who didn't even know his name. His wife, tall and graceful in fading lamplight, watched his every departure with eyes the color of hope rimmed in worry. Between them was an understanding that never needed words, her love fierce, her patience endless, her fear a silent echo every time the gate alarms sounded. She wore the loneliness of a hunter's partner as bravely as he wore his scars. Jinwoo, their son, sleeping quietly in the back room. Il-Hwan stood sometimes in the doorway, watching the gentle rise and fall of the boy's chest, measuring what every battle meant for the future. The promise he carried was not just for humanity, nor for the Hunters Guild, it was for the fragile thread connecting father to son. Outside, Hunter Association reports accumulated in sticky stacks, casualty lists, dungeon breach notices, complaints of corruption from rival guilds. The world was changing. Dungeons opening wider, monsters stalking more cleverly, the association caught between glory and desperation. Within his own team, the moods darkened. Hunters bickered about risk, some grew reckless, others cautious to a fault. Old friends drifted away, lost to wounds, despair, or the simple toll of years spent running the gauntlet of death daily. Il-Hwan was respected and feared, but sometimes he felt invisible, his sacrifices unnoticed, the costs measured only in loneliness and the mounting absence of those who once stood by him. Still, he pressed on. Missions bled together. Endless corridors of stone, the stench of monsters, the fleeting triumph of victory dulled by the knowledge it was never enough. Healing magic stopped the bleeding, but did little for the soul. He felt the change most deeply in himself. Power had made him formidable, but the man inside was always measuring, always questioning, was it worth it? Had he traded everything for a world not much safer, a family always at risk? Had he left Jinwoo too many empty mornings, too many unsaid words? In rare moments at home, Il-Hwan tried rediscovering the man he was before the wars. He helped with chores, carried Jinwoo to bed, sat silently next to his wife as rain drummed on the window. Every touch was careful, every word deliberate, every promise to stay safe a silent lie neither of them acknowledged. But the world did not pause for sorrow. Reports came in, a new gate, stronger monsters, rumors of a monarch lurking behind recent attacks. Il-Hwan loaded his gear, kissed his wife, looked one last time at his sleeping son, and vanished into the rain. Down in the association's tactical hub, commanders argued, screens flickered, alarms wailed. Il-Hwan listened quietly, the calm in every storm, noting every risk, every face in his team that could be lost before dawn. Personal sacrifice, this was the heart of his legend, the core of his story, as seen not in grand victories but in the silent pain between battles. The world saw a hero, his family saw a ghost growing quieter with each passing raid. The monsters feared him. The city relied on him. But at home, he was simply a father aching to be present, a husband longing to keep promises he knew he could not. And in the restless dark, as he laced his boots and shouldered his blade once more, Sung Il-Hwan prepared to pay the price again, for everyone except himself. As dungeon alarms blared through the city, Sung Il-Hwan's figure blended with hundreds of rushing hunters, but none bore burdens quite like his. He moved with purpose, neither hurried nor hesitant, every step calculated, every breath a quiet promise to return home. Inside the association's command hall, strategic holograms flickered on wide screens showing the emergence of a rare, high-caliber gate. Veterans whispered that only those prepared to gamble everything survived its traps. Il-Hwan was chosen as team lead, his reputation for courage and cool-headedness casting him as the beacon in chaos. His team gathered, a mix of battered faces and fresh recruits hoping to survive their first true test. Some glanced to Il-Hwan for assurance, others kept distance, aware that great power often drew great misfortune. Before departure, Il-Hwan sent a short, deliberate message home. Another gate. I'll be late. Take care of Jinwoo. The raid began in cold pre-dawn mist, entrance swirling with azure mana and bitter chill, every hunter tense. Inside, twisted passageways dripped with hostile magic. Monsters lurked in unnatural packs, their eyes burning scars into the minds of those who met their gaze. Il-Hwan's elemental mastery, flames that danced as both spear and shield, stone walls that rose in urgent defense, dominated the field in the opening skirmishes. Yet coordination was key, rescuing cornered teammates, redirecting attacks so no one faced the monsters alone. Still, casualties mounted, even the best magic couldn't heal broken courage. He dragged one wounded hunter from the brink, dosed another with life-restoring potion, all while battling his own exhaustion. Pain was his constant companion, rarely spoken of, endured as proof of commitment to those who followed him. Hours passed in battle, each minute a gamble with fate. At the dungeon's heart, the team confronted a beast more cunning than most, a warped creature that mimicked the voices of their loved ones. Il-Hwan's battle instincts warred with the ache in his chest as the monster echoed Jinwoo's laughter, his wife's gentle words. He steeled himself, focused, delivering the blow that saved his squad at profound personal cost. Battered but alive, Il-Hwan's team emerged from the gate into glimmering daylight, the city unaware of how close disaster had come. Those he saved clapped him on the shoulder, gratitude mixing with awe. Others wept quietly for lost comrades. Il-Hwan's gaze lingered, counting every absence, every life not returned. That night, at home, Il-Hwan held Jinwoo close, silent tears absorbed by the boy's hair. His wife understood, nothing needed to be said, between their hands was every word, every promise, every sacrifice paid for in blood and silence. In the deepest hours, as the city slept, he wrote in his journal. Victory tonight. But every win costs a piece. How long before there's nothing left to give? Sung Il-Hwan was a hero in every corridor of the Hunter Association. But his true story unfolded in the moments between battles, in wounds that didn't heal, in promises kept despite fear. His legend was forged not just in power, but in the relentless quiet endurance of a man who sacrificed all for the world, and for the family waiting with hope every time the doors closed behind him. The cold autumn wind swept through Seoul's Hunter district, rustling posters and banners that still bore stories of last week's victories. In the haze of morning, Sung Il-Hwan arrived early at the association headquarters, footsteps echoing with a wary determination that grew sharper with every mission. He paused before the glass doors, tracing fingers against the reflection staring back, a face worn by years of struggle, hair peppered with silver, eyes haunted but never broken. Today was different. The next mission was no typical raid. It was special, classified, and carried warnings whispered through every level of the association. This could change everything. Inside the war room, high-ranking officials huddled over digital maps. The gate was like none seen before, larger, unstable, radiating mana in unpredictable rhythms. Monarch activity was suspected nearby, and rumors flowed about shadows that could swallow whole teams in an instant. The tension was thick, measured in every breath. Il-Hwan was called to speak. "You know what's at stake," said Director Lee, voice clipped and tired. "We want your expertise, and your resolve. We cannot afford mistakes. Your team leaves at first light tomorrow. Prepare accordingly." Il-Hwan accepted without hesitation, masking doubts with a nod. He left the room, moving through crowds of hunters prepping equipment, reading briefings, bidding uncertain farewells. His first stop was the family apartment, smaller than years before, but full of warmth. Jinwoo, now a young boy with curious eyes, bounced from room to room, oblivious but hopeful. Il-Hwan hugged him close, memorizing the scent and feel of the child he'd fought for through countless battles. His wife met his gaze, understanding everything without needing explanation. They spent the evening together, cooking, sharing stories, stealing laughter in fleeting moments. Il-Hwan didn't speak of danger, only of hope and faith in return. Late at night, the preparations began. He sharpened blades with deliberate care, inspected armor for cracks and weaknesses, wrote final notes to command detailing field strategies and fallback plans. He left a letter for his loved ones, folded beneath Jinwoo's pillow. If I do not return, it is not because I did not try. You are the reason I fight. I love you, beyond all gates, beyond all days. Earlier than dawn, he met his squad, a tight unit of seasoned hunters and new faces reading his every move. Il-Hwan moved among them, answering technical questions, checking morale, reinforcing the reality that every hunter mattered. Before departure, he took a single moment for himself. Silently, he gazed at the sunrise, drawing strength not from power, but from the hope that he might yet return. In that fragile pause, he remembered childhood promises, every lesson earned on old battlefields, every reason for fighting still holding him strong. As the team loaded into vans, the gates looming in mana-hazed distance, Sung Il-Hwan closed his eyes and whispered a quiet blessing, for survival, for family, for an end to the sacrifices that had defined his life. The final mission preparations were complete. Every choice, every weapon, every farewell carried the weight of legend yet unwritten. Morning unfurled in pale gold as Sung Il-Hwan stood with his squad on the threshold of the association's staging grounds. The sky was bruised purple, clouds churning with barely suppressed tension, a mirror to the hearts of every hunter assembled. Il-Hwan surveyed his team with the calm precision of a commander and the deep, private anxiety of a father. Each hunter wore anticipation in different ways. Some adjusted armor with brisk, practiced motions, others murmured silent prayers or squeezed tokens from lost friends. For some, this would be their trial by fire, for others, a final stand. The portal before them roiled, a wide, unstable gate bristling with energy unlike any seen in previous missions. A low hum pulsed from its depths, whispering promises of glory and warnings of oblivion. Safety briefings completed, supplies checked, and last words said, it was Il-Hwan's moment to address the squad. He stood a step above the others, voice steady but unembellished. We stand here not as individuals, but as the shield between this world and the darkness beyond. Rely on your training, rely on each other. No heroics, just survival, just coming home. I trust every one of you. Let's return together. The words settled into silent resolve. Squad members clasped wrists, offering old traditions of luck and remembrance. Il-Hwan moved through a final set of checks, emergency warp stones, potion stocks, comm lines, all meticulously arranged. He made sure each new recruit was paired with a veteran. Quietly, he slipped a keepsake into his inner pocket, his son's pencil sketch of their family, crude lines, immortal hope. Across the yard, association staff offered nervous encouragement and hasty salutes. Directors peered through tinted glass, placing faith in the man who had seen more gates than most would survive in a lifetime. The time arrived. The squad lined up, stepping into the portal's shimmering veil in sequence. As Il-Hwan crossed the threshold, the air pressed down, tinged with mana, with fear, with destiny. Inside, the environment was instantly alien. The earth bent in impossible ways, light flickered violet on crystalline walls, and the air hummed with the static crackle of unspent violence. From his first breath, Il-Hwan knew this dungeon would be like no other. He scanned the landscape, issuing quick orders. Scouts fan out, ranged hunters ready spells, defense mages brace barriers. Every footstep further compounded the sense that something greater, something predatory and ancient, watched from the depths. Tension built with each meter, the squad moving as one through shifting corridors. Traps sprung with alarming intelligence, and monsters appeared in unpredictable waves. Il-Hwan's leadership and elemental power began to turn the tide. Blasts of flame clearing snarling beasts, pillars of earth shielding fallen comrades. Through it all, his mind stayed anchored in the messages and faces left behind, his wife's smile, Jinwoo's hand clutching a hope he could not yet understand. Every decision was weighted by more than strategy, it was colored by the promise to return. The group pushed deeper, toward the dungeon's icy heart, uncertain if the next corner would bring triumph, tragedy, or both. As Sung Il-Hwan led his people forward, the true battle, the one that would shape legacies and echo in the hearts of all he'd sacrificed for, was only just beginning. Deeper into the dungeon, the air thickened beyond mere mana, an oppressive presence pressing upon Sung Il-Hwan and his squad like invisible chains. The architecture around them pulsed with unnatural energy, walls warping and warbling as if alive, watching. Then the ambush came, not with ferocious beasts, but with subtle precision. Shadows flickered, and from shifting darkness emerged figures cloaked in corrupted hunter armor, their eyes cold with merciless intent. The unseen enemy. Hunters turned malevolent agents of the monarchs, skilled in deception and ruthless in execution. Il-Hwan's mind raced. These opponents were his former comrades twisted beyond recognition. Attacks were brutal and coordinated, exploiting every weakness of his team with surgical efficiency. Flame met shadow, earth contested smoke. The battle was both physical and psychological. The team fractured amid the chaos, trust fractured by suspicion and fear. Il-Hwan moved swiftly, calling orders, shielding allies, and confronting former friends now enemies. The loss stung deeper than any claw, the betrayal carved wounds unseen but bleeding fiercely. Using his elemental mastery, he summoned towering walls of stone to block ranged assaults and unleashed roaring infernos to scatter shadows. Yet, with every move, the weight of consequence pressed, mercy for the fallen, or decisive retribution. The fight pushed Il-Hwan to his limits, forcing him to innovate, melding fire's fury and earth's steadfastness not only for offense and defense but as a symbol of hope amid corruption. Critical moments saw him face down the corrupted leader, a hunter once admired, now a harbinger of the monarch's cruelty. Their clash was a tempest, lightning fast, devastating, a clash of wills underscored by painful memories. Victory came at a high cost. The dungeon grew silent only after the last shadow fell, but silence was fleeting. The unseen forces behind the attack lingered, signaling greater peril ahead. Il-Hwan emerged battle-worn yet unbroken, resolve crystallized anew. His sacrifices, and those of his team, were not just for survival, but for the fragile light still shining in a world threatened by encroaching darkness. The dawn broke hesitantly over Seoul's skyline, casting long, bleak shadows as the city exhaled a tentative breath. Inside the Hunter Association's war room, the tension was palpable, whispered accounts of loss, triumph, and betrayal echoing like ghostly remnants of the night's brutal ordeal. Il-Hwan stood at the window, staring into the distance, shoulders heavy. The mission had shattered the immediate threat, but beneath the surface roiled a deeper darkness, betrayals from within, wounds inflicted on comrades, and the unyielding truth that every victory was painted with loss. The team's survivors drifted back to their stations, some with bandaged wounds, others hollow-eyed, haunted by memories of former friends turned foes. It was a victory in the eyes of the world, but a bitter chord in the heart of every hunter present. Il-Hwan's face reflected the storm within. His body bore scratches and scars, testaments to hours of relentless fighting. His mind replayed moments of agony and courage, the desperate fights, the near-death escapes, the faces of fallen comrades etched into his memory. Every decision had weight, every sacrifice, a silent prayer. In the quiet corners of the hall, whispered conversations flourished among the elders. Rumors surfaced, of even darker forces lurking in the shadows, of monarchs whispering through fractured gates, waiting for a moment to strike their final blow. Il-Hwan's thoughts drifted to Jinwoo. The boy was growing, oblivious to the storm his father fought every day. But soon, Jinwoo would face his own crossroads, the day he awakened was nearing, and Il-Hwan's greatest hope was that his sacrifices would not be in vain. That night, as the city's heartbeat steadied, Il-Hwan penned his reflections. Every inked word became a vow, to forge a future where the darkness no longer cast its long shadow over his family and the world. He closed his journal with a solemn promise: "This victory is only a chapter. The war is far from over, but I will stand firm. For the future. For Jinwoo. For every soul counting on us to endure." The shadows may have receded for now, but they whispered still, silent witnesses to a hero's silent sacrifice, forever etched into the legend of Sung Il-Hwan. The winds carried a chill unlike any before, whispering through Seoul's streets as dusk settled with a heavy, unsettling stillness. Within the Hunter Association, unease permeated halls once bustling with confident purpose. Sung Il-Hwan sensed it first, an undercurrent of power twisting beneath the surface, creeping tendrils of darkness that no raid could dispel. Reports arrived in waves. Unexplained dungeon expansions, attacks growing fiercer, and the growing presence of monarch agents weaving malevolence into the fabric of reality. Il-Hwan gathered with his closest allies in a guarded chamber, mapping threats that defied simple solutions. Faces etched with exhaustion and resolve turned toward him for guidance, a burden he bore with unflinching resolve. Private moments at home grew rare. Jinwoo's youthful innocence flickered brighter, yet Il-Hwan felt the shadow of destiny looming ever closer. He prepared the boy, teaching lessons in survival, in courage, while shielding him from truths too harsh for a child. The darkness was not just external. Political intrigue and factional strife within the Hunter Association threatened unity at the very moment they needed it most. Il-Hwan worked tirelessly to mend fractures, build alliances, and shore up defenses. New enemies emerged, hybrids of mythology and nightmare, strengthened by monarch corruption. The battlefield was expanding into realms both seen and unseen. Il-Hwan's powers surged anew, elemental forces dancing with unprecedented synergy, a reflection of his growth and the growing stakes. But with every surge came caution. Power without control meant ruin. As the world's balance wavered, Il-Hwan stood firm, a guardian shaped by sacrifice, fueled by hope, and prepared to face the rising darkness with fire, earth, and unbreakable will. Under a storm-laden sky, tensions writhed in Seoul's Hunter Association like live wires. The rising darkness was no longer a distant threat, but a storm close enough to shatter bones and break wills. Sung Il-Hwan stood at the forefront, battered yet unyielding. His elemental powers flared with wild brilliance, the living embodiment of resilience. The battles had grown relentless, each raid deeper, each foe deadlier. Loyalties were tested amid whispers of betrayal and shadow conspiracies. At home, the weight of his burdens pressed hardest. Jinwoo's gaze held questions Il-Hwan struggled to answer. Moments together were bittersweet, a fragile refuge from the chaos. In the war rooms, strategies sharpened into desperate gambits as monarch forces escalated assaults on human strongholds. Allies became wary, council splintered, and Il-Hwan found himself navigating as much political labyrinth as physical. The breaking point came on a night scorched by lightning, when a massive portal exploded open inside the city itself, flooding streets with monstrous hordes. The battle was apocalyptic. Il-Hwan led the charge with fiery wrath and unbreakable will. Amid destruction, sacrifices piled. Friends fell, the city burned, hope flickered like a waning candle. Yet Il-Hwan's command held firm, a beacon amidst the chaos. The battle was a crucible, burning away doubt and fear. It forged a new era for hunters and mankind alike, a time where legends would rise or fall on blades, fire, and unwavering hearts. The aftermath was both cruel and profound. The city, battered but unbroken, whispered the name Sung Il-Hwan among its scars and ashes. His battles, sacrifices, and unyielding spirit had not only repelled darkness but had forged a legacy etched into the hearts of all who called humanity their own. Ordinary life seemed distant now, a fragile illusion beneath the weight of relentless threats. Yet in the quiet moments between storms, Il-Hwan found fleeting peace within the embrace of his family. Jinwoo, now aware of the burdens his father bore, stepped closer into his own destiny, carrying forward lessons of courage and hope. Il-Hwan's final days were a testament to a warrior's grace, resolute, humble, and deeply human. Knowing the world he fought for would need new champions, he passed his strength, his resolve, his love, into the hands of the next generation. As he whispered farewells beneath skies painted with dawn's first light, Sung Il-Hwan's story became legend, a reminder that heroes are forged in sacrifice, and that the greatest power lies in the bonds we hold dear. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the incredible saga of Sung Il-Hwan. His story is one of courage, sacrifice, and unbreakable will, a testament to the heroes forged in the shadows. If you enjoyed this cinematic exploration, please like, share, and subscribe to Anime What If Saga for more epic anime retellings and alternate universe adventures. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or what stories you'd love to see next. Until next time, stay strong, and remember, every shadow hides a story waiting to be told.